Hi everyone. Before we jump into this episode, I wanted to share that Resoundingly Human will be taking a break this summer. But this isn't for rest and relaxation. We'll be hard at work on a refresh and great new content. So enjoy this episode and take some time to get caught up on earlier interviews, and we'll see you again in the fall. Retailers are gearing up for their annual Christmas and July sales, but this year, the early holiday cheer comes with a warning. Escalating tariff whiplash may lead to higher prices, fewer options, and major delays for shoppers come December. Behind the scenes, businesses are scrambling to forecast demand and lock in orders for the back to school and winter holiday seasons. But unpredictability in trade policy is breaking the very tools they rely on to plan. In this episode, I'm joined by Debdatta Sinha Roy, a principal research scientist in OR and data science at Oracle Retail Science R&D, to explore how this volatility is creating an invisible crisis within the analytics systems that power global logistics, and what a better path forward could look like. From smarter sourcing strategies to more stable policymaking, we'll discuss what it will take to bring long-term resilience to today's fragile supply chains, as retailers and consumers alike are already feeling the impact on the holiday shopping season. Debdatta, thank you so much for joining me to share your expertise. Before we jump in, can you give our listeners a little background on the work you have done in the area of tariffs and supply chain resiliency?
Good afternoon, and thank you for having me on your podcast. So, my work in supply chain resiliency really accelerated during the COVID-19 pandemic when traditional logistics models broke down almost overnight. I was at Staples back then, where I helped redesign some essential transportation and delivery operations problems to respond to sudden disruptions in demand and fulfillment. Since joining Oracle Retail, I have been co-leading the AI Foundation product, which involves building robust analytics solutions for retail clients across sectors, from fashion to grocery to electronics. My research focuses on making data-driven decisions under uncertainty, and tariffs are a prime example of uncertainty. These are policy changes that disrupt the data pipelines and assumptions our models depend on.
All right, how about we start with the basics? What was the original goal of US tariffs, and how did they intend to address vulnerabilities in the supply chains?
The primary intent behind US tariffs was to reduce reliance on foreign supply chains and encourage domestic manufacturing, especially in critical sectors. The idea was to promote economic independence and national resilience. But the challenge is tariffs were introduced abruptly, without the necessary domestic infrastructure or manufacturing capabilities in place. So instead of strengthening supply chains, they created immediate cost pressures and operational disruptions. Tariffs can be a long term strategic tool, but only when phased in with supportive policies, investment in capacity, manufacturing, and workforce development.
So now you've previously stated that uncertainty, not tariffs themselves, cause the most disruption. Could you explain why unpredictability is so damaging to supply chains?
Supply chains rely on predictability, whether you're forecasting demand, scheduling shipments, or planning production. Our analytics models need stable assumptions. For example, lead times, costs, trade regulations. When those inputs fluctuate, like when tariffs are announced, paused, or reversed in rapid succession, the entire foundation of the models collapses. Businesses can adapt to higher costs, but they can't really easily plan around volatility. It's like trying to navigate when with a GPS, where the map itself keeps changing.
What happens to supply chain forecasting when a stable regulatory environment is missing?
Forecasting becomes guesswork. Our models are data driven and built on historical patterns. When the regulatory environment is unstable, historical data becomes less reliable, and the assumptions behind cost structures, delivery times, and supplier capacities fall apart. In such scenarios, even the most advanced operations research tools lose their predictive power. You may still run the models, but the outputs won't guide decisions in a meaningful way. During COVID, we had to pivot quickly to alternative data sources like lockdown data from CDC and other public agencies. With tariffs, there's no equivalent unified data feed to plug into.
So, with Christmas and July promotions about to begin, what are some of the real risks that shoppers and retailers alike could face this holiday season?
The biggest risks are price hikes, fewer product choices, and delays. Retailers are already placing large orders now for the end of year season. If tariff rates spike or sourcing disruptions occur mid cycle, costs go up and inventory plans fall apart. Some retailers may overstock now to hedge against future tariffs, driving up storage costs and tying up working capital. Others may scale back, leading to understocked shelves later. For consumers, this could mean paying more for less, especially on high demand items like electronics, clothing, and even school supplies.
So, it might sound to some like it's a little crazy. We're already talking about holiday shopping, but how is this mid year tariff uncertainty affecting critical planning windows for back to school and end of year inventory? Can businesses recover in time if policies shift again?
It's a huge problem because we're already deep into the planning cycle. Retailers typically finalize major orders between May and July. That's when shipping containers are booked, suppliers are locked in, and budgets are committed. Any major tariff shift now means businesses are stuck making urgent decisions with limited flexibility. Even if policies stabilize later this year, the lead times in manufacturing and global transport mean it may be too late to course correct. Recovery from such mid cycle disruptions usually isn't measured in weeks, but in seasons.
We've seen policymakers frame tariffs as a show of strength, especially in response to foreign tariffs. Do you think this sort of tit for tat approach may ultimately harm US businesses more than help them?
In theory, reciprocity in trade policies makes sense. But in practice, tit for tat approaches without strategic coordination tend to hurt domestic businesses the most. Supply chains operate on long planning horizons, 12 to 18 months or more. Sudden changes derail that entire planning cycle. A retaliatory tariff might sound strong politically, but if it disrupts sourcing or causes ripple effects across logistics and pricing, it often ends up harming the very businesses it aims to protect. The key is strategic, phased responses, not abrupt escalations.
So, Debdatta, if tariffs aren't the answer, what would a more sustainable and strategic approach to domestic self sufficiency look like?
We need a long term game plan. That means investing in infrastructure, technology, and workforce training to scale domestic manufacturing gradually. Targeted economic incentives like tax credits, R&D funding, and public-private partnerships can help build viable local alternatives. Policies should align with realistic timelines for capability development. A rush to reshoring without planning leads to bottlenecks and cost explosions. Building resilience should be about capability, not compulsion.
So, I'd love to hear your perspective. In your view, how should companies rethink their approach to global sourcing, especially regarding countries like China?
The post COVID world has shown us that concentrated sourcing is risky. Companies need to diversify through nearshoring, multi-sourcing, and developing regional supplier networks. That doesn't mean abandoning China overnight, but rather reducing overdependence. This could mean blending sourcing from China with partners in Mexico, Southeast Asia, or even domestic suppliers, depending on the product category. Resilience lies in optionality, being able to pivot when needed without starting from scratch.
And finally, what steps can business leaders take today to build more agile and resilient supply chains in the face of ongoing policy shifts?
Agility starts with mindset and data readiness. First, leaders should invest in scenario planning tools that simulate different policy environments. Second, supply chain contracts should be flexible, able to absorb some degree of fluctuation. Third, safety stock and buffer capacity can no longer be seen as inefficiencies. They are insurance against disruption. Finally, closer collaboration with suppliers and real time visibility into the supply chain are vital. The best prepared companies won't be those with perfect predictions, but those with the ability to adapt quickly and intelligently.
Debdatta, thank you so much for taking time to share your special insight on this very complex and still evolving issue. It's been such a pleasure speaking with you.
Likewise, thank you for having me. It's a critical conversation, and I'm glad to contribute.
Everyone, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and comment down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on my interview with Debdatta and his unique insight. All right, see you next time.